move into a small apartment just off then seedy Sunset Boulevard.
When I first met him, he had a Bentley. Then, you know, the last time I saw him, he was driving a VW, you know, and borrowing. And I said I had some furniture I was getting rid of, and he took it. Asked me if he could have it, because he was, you know, but he never complained about it, and he was always rather funny about it.
Through it all, Sal remained convinced that success was just around the corner.
There are very, very few actors in this business that have not gone through that terrible, awful period of not being able to get work. Sinatra, I mean, Elizabeth Taylor, people like that, they're big stars who have had here and then gone over here. It's the valleys and peaks. Sal, in the 70s, had peaked and was now in the valley, and we were trying to come back.
During production of the play Fortune in Men's Eyes, Sal started a relationship with fellow actor Courtney Burr.
We met each other, and we started talking. There was a bond. There was an emotional bond and need that up to then had not been tapped. And that's why I think it had actually turned into the relationship that it did.
Together, they traveled and even did some dinner theater to help make ends meet. The plays were generally romantic comedies, and Sal was noted for his comic flair.
It wasn't what he wanted to do, but he developed an appreciation of survival. You know, there's no shame in surviving. The shame is sitting around waiting for a role and trying to keep up some image. He didn't do that.
In 1971, Sal and Courtney moved to London, where Sal tried to get projects made, including a film with a homosexual theme called The Wrong People. No one was interested, and he was finally forced to give up. He moved back from London a few years later and concentrated on live theater, even taking on the role of a producer.
In New York, I'm producing a play called
raising money for the play The Children's Mass in New York in 1973. The Children's Mass was a story about a transvestite, a hooker, an alcoholic, and a crippled writer. And Sal discovered firsthand the difficulties of selling such a plot in the early 70s.
One of the big, hello? Yeah, speaking. Right, I'll hold. One of the lines that they always throw is that it's not my cup of tea, and I'll lay you odds it's not her cup of tea. Hello? Yeah, Sal Mineo speaking. You did read the play? Right. And how did you feel about it? It's not your cup of tea. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. It's just that I've been hearing from so many people that it's not their cup of tea, and I'm sorry that you're not going to be part of us.
He was a very unconventional, kind of a Greenwich Village artist type, you know. He wasn't like anybody else.
He was without guile. He was without any pretenses. He was cool.
It looked like things were finally on the upswing for Sal. In 1975, at age 36, Sal took over the part of a comic bisexual burglar in the San Francisco production of the play P.S. Your Cat is Dead. The play was headed to Los Angeles, where actor Keir Dullea would join him.
He was marvelous. I think he thought this was going to do a lot for his career. And I think maybe it would have.
But just a week before the Los Angeles opening of the play, Sal Mineo would make headlines for all the wrong reasons. On February 12, 1976, Sal Mineo was busy rehearsing for a new play that he hoped would at last be the break he needed. He and his co-star parted ways late in the evening.
We walked each other up to the front of the theater and out into the street, and I probably gave him a slap on the back and said, "See you tomorrow."
At around 10 o'clock that night, Sal's neighbors heard screams outside his West Hollywood apartment. By the time they reached the source of the screams, it was too late. 37-year-old actor Sal Mineo was found lying on the ground with blood flowing from his body. Stabbed in the chest, he died before paramedics could take him to the hospital.
I received a phone call from a police officer who immediately told me that Sal was killed And I just couldn't believe it.
I spoke to Sal a few hours before he was killed, and the last words we said to each other were, "I love you."
Witnesses said they had seen a young white male with blonde hair fleeing the scene. A heavy hunting-type knife had been used for the crime.
Well, my first thoughts were that it was a robbery that had gone awry. During the investigation that night, we found out that he was a homosexual. And then that opened a whole new field. Is this a disgruntled lover? Is this a male prostitute he picked up off the street? Or was he into that? Or what?
With the police pursuing this new angle, rampant rumors and speculation about Sal's personal life soon made it to the press. And everybody was sure they knew exactly what had happened.
The papers went berserk and, oh, homosexual, possibly a homosexual entanglement as part of the cause of it, etc.
Somebody said that the reason that he was murdered is that because he was dealing drugs and he got into a fight with a drug dealer. And it's so ludicrous because if he was a drug dealer, he was certainly the poorest drug dealer in America, in the world. He was not a druggie. He was not involved in drugs, for sure.
The police set up a special desk to field the huge number of phone calls from people who claimed they had clues and leads. But in the end, all the information led nowhere. Sal's murder remained a gruesome mystery for more than a year. Then, in May of 1977, a woman told investigators that her husband, Lionel Ray Williams, was the man who had killed Sal Mineo behind his apartment that night. Lionel Williams had bragged to her about the murder, she said, and he had used a hunting knife for the crime. Police were able to buy a knife identical to the one she described, and it matched the wound on Sal's body. When police finally tracked down Williams, he was serving time in a Michigan jail. Williams denied any involvement in the murder. Lionel Williams was put on trial in January 1979 and was found guilty of 10 robberies and the murder of Sal Mineo. He was sentenced to at least 51 years in prison. He has since been released for that crime.
No doubt in my mind whatsoever. Lionel Williams was the perpetrator of the murder of Sal Mineo. Looking back, on retrospect, you think, why didn't I pursue the robbery angle more? We might have solved it a lot sooner.
Sal Mineo was buried next to his father in a cemetery in Valhalla, New York. His mother and brother Michael have since joined him there. For those who loved him, the pain of losing him remains more than 20 years later.
He was very gentle. That's why his death was just so unspeakable. He was a very loving, gentle person, and his whole life was trying not to hurt people, trying to bring out the best in people.
Sal brought a great humanity to his performances. He could share those private moments that most of us are very careful to hide from others.
It's rare to find a guy who's, so self-effacing and warm and funny and your friend. He was a real friend. And I think with his resilience and his good humor and his dedication and his talent, he would have managed to turn it around.
There's a new version available of the film that made Sal Mineo a star. Last month, a newly restored and digitally mastered edition of Rebel Without a Cause was released on DVD. In addition to the cleaned-up print, there's extra footage on the disc, including Mineo's screen test, which was shot on the set of A Streetcar Named Desire. And while Sal Mineo will always be remembered as part of Rebel's doomed trio of teenagers, there's been surprisingly little written about him. His story inspired a mystery novel called Who Killed Sal Mineo, but there hasn't been a single published biography of him.